Hi guys, hope this finds you well. Welcome to lecture 7, probably going to be by far the shortest lecture we have. So this is basically just a midterm review. So really all I'm going to do in this lecture is just say some things about the structure of the midterm, as well as some practicalities about it, and set us up for next week where we'll just focus on actually going through some review questions. So specifically, let's start with just a quick reminder about how your grade is determined for this class. So as you know, there's basically 3 modes of assessment. So there's the homework, there's the midterm, and there's the final exam. Your grade is going to be determined by a total out of 100 points. So you can score a maximum of 20 points on the homework. That is, I'm going to count your top 10 homework scores and take those out of 20. Then the midterm is going to be worth 40 points, and the final is also going to be worth 40 points. All that matters for our purposes for determining your grade is whatever total you get out of this 100. So I'm going to add up your homework score, your midterm score, and your final score, divide that by 10, round the result to the nearest 0.5, and that's going to be your grade. So one thing to note about this structure is this means that you can theoretically pass the class even if you fail some particular part. So don't be too stressed about whatever grade you get on the midterm. What matters for your overall grade is how many points you get. So we'll come back to exactly what these 40 points are going to consist in a second. But first, let's talk a little bit about the practicalities for the midterm. So as you know, the midterm is going to be on Monday, 19th of October, from 8:30 to 10:30. Now it's going to be on Canvas, and what's important to note about this is that the Canvas portal will close at 10:30. So what this means is that there's no answering any questions, no uploading or anything after 10:30. So you've got to make very sure that everything is in before this time limit. Now notably, the exam is actually designed to only be about 90 minutes long. So there's extra time already incorporated in to allow you to upload. I'm going to talk to them and see if we'll also have a little bit more time for uploading and any technical difficulties, but there's already been some time included in. With regards to it, again, it's going to be on Canvas, and now I had hoped that we'd be able to allow you both to either upload file answers or input things directly. However, because of the way things work on Canvas, I was only allowed to pick one option. And for reasons, thinking about it a little bit, I thought it best to go with the upload option. So, in order to answer the exam, right, to fill in answers, you're going to have to upload files. Now these files can either be, say, pictures of handwritten work, or they can be scans, or if you're used to typing in answers, you can say, type in your answers onto something like a Word document, save it as a PDF, and upload that. So there'll be still ways if you want to type your answers, that's perfectly fine, but again, you're going to have to upload the files. Notably, it's also going to be, from what I've been told, 1 file per section. Now what this means is that if you've looked at all at our practice midterm, you'll note that there's something like, exercise A, which has a couple questions, exercise B that has a couple questions. Each of these is a section. So you're going to need to upload a file for the definitions and for TFL symbolization and things like this. So that's the structure as far as I'm aware. That's what I've been told. If there's any change, if I learn anything else, I will let you know immediately. But again, you're going to have to upload files, and it's going to be 1 file per section. With regards to actually doing it, you can use anything that's on the Canvas page, so and beyond, right? It'll be OpenNote, OpenBook. So use any notes you have. Feel free to use things like the textbook, the solutions book, any lecture slides, videos. Obviously use the symbol sheet. Right? The only thing that you can't use is each other. Generally a good point not to use other people, but here what I really mean is that there's no collaboration, right? So you have to fight this alone, just like the gazebo. So that's pretty straightforward. Again, going to be uploading. You can use whatever information you have available. in particular anything that's on the Canvas page, but feel free to use other stuff too, but there's no collaboration. Good. So what's actually going to be on the midterm? What kind of questions? Well, again, there's going to be 40 points total, and here's basically how it breaks down. There's going to be 2 points with regards to definitions. So what this really means is that there's 2 definition questions. You know what the first one is. I've told you. Then there's going to be 5 points for analysis questions. So these are the kinds of questions where I'll say something like, assume that A is a tautology. What can we then say about A tautologically entails C? Something like this. Right? After that, there's going to be 7 points in TFL symbolization. Now what this is I'll give you a symbolization key and then ask you to symbolize some English sentences using that key. Then there's going to be 6 points in TFL semantic notions. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to use truth tables to assess some semantic notions. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. Then there'll be 2 questions, or 3 points each, on assessing the validity of English arguments using truth tables. So here I'm going to give you an English argument. I'm going to ask for you to symbolize it in TFL, and then using a truth table to tell me whether the argument is valid or invalid. So it's 3 steps: right? Constructing the symbolization key, symbolizing the sentences, and then doing the truth table to tell me about whether it's valid or invalid. Finally, we'll have 6 points on first-order logic symbolizations, where I'll give you a key and ask you to symbolize some English sentences, and some questions about FOL semantic notions. So let's talk about the TFL semantic notions and the FOL semantic notions. Tell you a little bit more about those. So with regards to TFL semantic notions, what I'm going to do is ask for you, so give you a TFL sentence and ask for you to use truth tables to tell me whether it's a tautology or a contradiction or neither. I'll also give you some TFL sentences and ask for you to use truth tables to tell me whether they're tautologically equivalent or not. I'll give you some sentences and ask for you to show me whether they're jointly tautologically consistent. And then, of course, I've already mentioned there's going to be these cases where I'll give you an English argument and you need to use truth tables to tell me whether the argument's valid or invalid. So that's the sort of TFL semantic notions. So these are the sort of things we talked quite a bit about using truth tables to assess semantic properties. The same thing goes with FOL semantic notions. Here, what we're going to do is instead of use truth tables, we're going to use interpretations. And specifically, I'm going to give you a sentence and ask for you to show me that it's not a tautology and that it's not a contradiction. So construct an interpretation that shows it can be false, and this should be logical truth rather than tautology, so that it's not a logical truth and it's not a contradiction. So construct an interpretation that can make it false, and construct an interpretation that can make it true. I'll also give you 2 sentences and ask for you to show me that they're not logically equivalent. I'll give you some sentences and ask for you to show me that they are jointly consistent. And finally, I'll give you an FOL argument and ask for you to show me that it is invalid. Now, importantly, again, I'm always going to ask for you to show me that it's not a logical truth and not a contradiction, that these sentences are not logically equivalent, that the sentences are jointly consistent, and that the argument is invalid. So I won't give you a valid argument. Okay? I will promise to give you an invalid one. Good. So that's the kind of thing we're going to have on the exam. To go back a bit, one thing to note is that this exam is very kind of TFL heavy. So if you've been struggling the last couple weeks with first order logic, you can still do very well, even if you just focus on the TFL. So don't stress too much if you've been struggling with first order logic. You can still do extremely well in this midterm just with TFL stuff. Okay. So that's basically it with regards to the midterm. Now, importantly, what we're going to do next week, so with regards to Lecture 7, the Q&A time will be reserved just for review, so addressing any questions you have. And then in the tutorial, what we'll do is we'll talk through the midterm practice test, which has been uploaded to Canvas. So that's really what we're going to do. It's going to be entirely just driving at reviewing in order, or reviewing for a midterm. When we come back from the midterm, we're going to shift topics. So what we've been doing in the first half of class can be broadly understood as something like model theory, in some sense. The idea really here, and you can kind of see it both in terms of what we've done with TFL and what we've done with FOL. So we got familiar with both of our languages, and that was something we spent a lot of time on. But once we got familiar with TFL, we started thinking about valuations. And valuations are basically models for TFL sentences. They're cases where we assign truth values to some of our atoms and then see what happens. And interpretations are basically models for first-order logic sentences. We assign some extensions to the predicates, pick out a domain, figure out the names, and then see what happens to our sentences when they're true and false and things like this. Models are really useful. But in fact, we've already sort of seen that model theory can only take us so far. So for example, with the FOL semantic notions, right, we don't really have the machinery to prove a sentence is a logical truth, or to prove that it is a contradiction. Similarly, we don't really have a tool to show that two sentences are logically equivalent. That's because, well, in these cases, we need to think about every possible interpretation, which is sort of beyond our ken. No matter how hard we work, we can't really do that. The topic for the second half of the class is going to give us the tools to do that. So instead of model theory, in our second half, we're going to be doing something that's called proof theory. And in proof theory, what we do is we start with some assumptions and then derive some results. So we're going to have rules that allow us to derive certain results from particular kinds of sentences. And then the fun part will be applying these rules together to allow us to construct an argument that will take us from our premises to our conclusion. So if you like, what we're going to be doing in the second half is basically showing how you can get from our premises to our conclusion when the argument's valid. So we'll come back to this after the midterm, and it'll be a very fun topic. What we're going to do the first 2 weeks when we're back from the midterm is we'll spend 2 weeks thinking about natural deduction rules for truth functional logic, get familiar with this sort of proof theoretic approach, and go from there. Importantly, our next Q&A session, so the Q&A session for this lecture, and the tutorial next week will focus on practice midterm and preparing for the upcoming midterm. So thank you guys very much. Have a lovely rest of the week. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you all on Monday. Bye.